All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Semo?
We're back on Winter's Heart. And for people who slogged through the last one, sorry for the technical sound issues. One of the comments is too garbled. Yes, but we couldn't hear it when we were doing it. We could only hear it
Yeah.
when we replayed it. So I'll play with YouTube settings and see if I can edit it in some way. But other than that, that will be the only one we attempt with that format. Uh, but now we're back on the book. Is there anything, just in case people stop listening, that you thought was a major important point that we brought up in the last one?
Not really major. I mean, there's a lot of individual little bits of goodness that I liked.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it was one of the better prologues. Probably the best prologue was Boar's, the
mhm.
meeting, the Dark Friend meeting. But this one was definitely a meaty prologue.
Um, I find Scott's comment here interesting about the sea folk, because once again they come up in the prologue and their way of dealing with people. Um,
It's very bad faith, that's for sure.
yeah, as he puts it, a culture that praises making unfair deals, taking advantage of people, always getting it over on your trade partners is going to be shunned and reviled. And that was something I was thinking as we were talking, but I didn't want to get off on a tangent, that it's because they basically have a monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about in the world building, Jordan talks about that's how Karheen got so rich, is they were the only other place to be able to get stuff from across the Aiel Waste. That was the only other way to do it, was their trade caravans while they were in good favor with the Aiel. And otherwise, it's just the occasional small peddler that makes the trip. Otherwise, you have to rely on the sea folk ships.
Mm-hmm.
So uh their insular nature and arrogance makes them something of an oddity in the world, and I think that's one of the reasons their storyline in general feels weak.
Mm-hmm.
Because you not only do you not see much of a resolution of a lot of the other things that we've talked about, but you don't see much of a resolution of them having to integrate themselves into the rest of the world. Um,
And this is where to remedy that, I think you would have had to have an expanding of geography, because all we get from the Shanshan is realistically what they're doing on the main continent, and everything that happens on the main continent, except for the trip in the beginning where they went around from Tyr to Tanchico and had to be fast, and that realistically the Sea Folk have no place. They have no place in this battle because it takes place on the Blight border with the Borderlands, which is landlocked. So we've got a seafaring culture that makes deals, and we never have a use for them at some
I
point.
hadn't really thought of it before, but this is super spoilery, so let me be as oblique as possible. There is one major plot point mystery that comes at the end that the sea folk could have been used to give hints on, because they're the only ones that could have given hints on it, because they're the only ones that go there. So
Is that island that? Let me
no,
put this for spoilers.
yeah,
Sea Folk use
yeah.
island. Okay, so we'll cover that. You can enlighten me in spoilers on that one.
Okay, yeah, there's a couple things there. All
Yeah,
right,
but
so
unless we had some maybe some form of naval use where they were used to combat the Shanshan as they were sailing over at some point,
mhm,
that might. But by the time they make their deals and they become useful, the Shanshan becomes something different in the story.
mhm,
So also spoilery there. So we don't want to go
yeah.
too far into that.
All right. Well, we are on chapter one, and we're going to try and go all the way through. I think chapter six is this big chunk of Perrin and Fail.
Yeah,
So it's about 100 pages. We should be able to get through it because, as we've bemoaned before, there's a lot of meh here. So in fact, the first thing to really jump out at me uh is I think it's page 94 in the paperback.
This is how meh it is. I just reread this like 2 days ago, and I'm
Trying to
looking
remember
at it,
what's
trying to
there.
remember what
Yeah.
was there. Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't really talked about Aram much. Uh and there's a moment here, there's a comment by Elias, which is interesting and is perhaps the only real quality storyline in this whole slog is the eventual resolution of the Tinker with the sword.
Hmm.
And as Elias puts it here, starting at the bottom of page 94, you did the boy no favor, Elias had told Perrin. You helped him let go of what he believed, and now all he has to believe in is you and that sword. It's not enough, not for any man. And that's really kind of the whole point of Aram's storyline is in the moment in the Shadow Rising where he picks up the sword, it it makes sense and you understand where Perrin's coming from, you sympathize with him. And most readers, I would venture, probably think, yeah, pick up the damn sword and do something.
Can
Um,
I finally use this one, or is it more relevant a little bit later?
oh, it's more relevant later, but yeah, 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 yeah. Um, but that is one of the things that he becomes so obsessed with that he's not really paying attention to. But also there's an element of he doesn't know what to do about it. Um,
Well, and this is somewhere where I agree with him, because I would struggle with this too, because I do believe in autonomy, and what he did was give him autonomy. Like you're free from
mhm.
these beliefs that are being forced upon you. If you believe them yourself, then it's the best for you to be there. But if you don't believe them, then you shouldn't be held to them. But I'm also not equipped to give you a counter belief.
Yeah, yeah. It, all he has is the sword and Perrin, and that's, as Elias says, that's not enough for any man. Um,
Well, that this is where Perrin is not equipped to give him something else. I think I would be, but like Elias, I have a lot more life experience. And Perrin should be taking this as you know what? Maybe I should sit down with Aram or Aram or however you pronounce it. I always said Aram,
I
but
always did too, but I'm pretty sure that I looked up the pronunciation when we started doing this, and it's a Rom.
oh, okay. Well, I'll take your word for it for the time being, and I'll look it up later. But uh, he yeah, parents should have taken that as a I should sit down with this kid and let's say, hey, what are you looking for? I appreciate your loyalty, but you are also a person. And if
Hmm.
following me is part of your life, that's fine. But also, what's the bigger picture for you? And that's where experience comes in. And Elias is that voice of experience for Perrin. Elias and Hopper.
And I hadn't really thought about this before. Trying to find nuggets of goodness from this storyline, and it occurs to me that Perrin does have more, but he's also kind of borderline where Aram is too. And you see that when he gets back to the camp, finds out the news about Fail, and almost just lets everything go to hell because he's so uh uh hyper focused and emotional, as the wise ones tell him, you're being irrational. Um, because he's so obsessed with getting Fail back and so worried, is she even alive and all this. And then he starts to realize, you know, I have all these other things I have to do too. I have to take care of the two Rivers people. I have to take care of all these Karhinan servants that are under my care. I have to make sure that, you know, um, Alejandro's uh, armsman isn't going bananas. I have to. So he has all these other things to do, and he's just barely keeping it together. So he can't really realize that should be a point of eye-opening. He should be able to draw that connection with what Elias says, but he's so self-focused that that not only he can barely see it for himself, let alone see it for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's kind of falling into what Aram has already fallen into, and so he should be able to see that, but he's just barely able to make it through for his own self, let alone dealing with this existential crisis of this other person. Um, and we could go off on a tangent on meaning, but we do that
Yeah.
on the other day. But that that's a lot of what I've been listening to lately, so that might be why that jumped out at me when I was skimming through here.
Well, I'll add something. You talking about not thinking clearly. I thought it was just weak when Perrin made the decision to not let the Asha Aman go looking as well. He was saying, well, neither of them are trackers. Go get another Two Rivers guy to go with them.
Mhm.
You know, you talked about all these people that are great trackers. Go get one of them. Have them, get one or two of them, have them go with them, and one party makes gateways, the other party looks at what they're looking at.
Yeah,
You could have done the thing.
I I thought it was in here, but I think it's later when it comes back to him that he makes it make sense. But I don't know if he was thinking of it in the moment, which is that he needs the Ashaman there and rested so that when it's time to move, they can move everybody. But I don't know if he was
But even
necessarily
still, you
thinking
could
that at the
say,
moment.
you could send one at a time.
Yeah, yeah, true. Although I'm not sure how powerful those two are when it comes to making gateways for everybody. Um, I don't know that there's really anything else in this whole chapter except that we get some more ballware coolness.
That's what I was just about
You
to
know,
to go to next. Yeah.
that's the only other really good thing about this chapter. Um,
Well, and even as cool and as collected as he is, he's still got that chip on his shoulder, that blind spot for the Children of the Light because of
mhm,
what Valda did.
yeah. Um, I'm not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Is you see it a little bit at the beginning, and then it kind of ends up with it as well, where Perrin is having he's basically got PTSD from Dumais Wells,
Mm-hmm.
and that the vision of that, and early on when he's talking to Elias and thinking we might have to fight our way out of here, he's overlapping the scenes of gore and devastation of Dumais Wells onto the town of Abilet that they're in. Um, and I don't know that there's really ever a very good resolution of that. Of In fact, it almost seems like it gets ignored because he goes over the deep end, um, in the metaphorical sense of what I believe it was one of Egwene's dreams, where she sees Perrin and a tinker with a sword hacking wildly at brambles, going headlong, towards a cliff, and they don't know that the cliff is there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm quite certain that that dream is him rushing recklessly to try and rescue Fail and heading for a cliff.
Which, if yeah, say you're correct in this line of reasoning, this is where he could have done it a little better. All this angst with Fail could have been actually done differently in the fact that he's not taking action when he should, and she's frustrated with him because, but you can get in his head, and he's like, I'm not going to do this because, and then flashback of Dumais Wells,
Mm-hmm.
and he needs to take action on Masema or whatever is the situation at the time, and he keeps refusing because of these flashbacks, and then
Mm-hmm.
she gets kidnapped and he flips. That
Be,
would have been a little bit
yeah,
better
that's a good
presentation
point.
of that. Yeah.
Yes, because
Then
it
we wouldn't have had
fits.
the I can't figure out Fail,
It
I don't know, which we already figured out in book
and
4.
it, and it's something that needed a little more time because it fits perfectly with his character, with what we saw with him, going from boy to young man to man, which is that Perrin is this gentle giant. He is a methodical thinker because he doesn't want to hurt other people, because he can't roughhouse with the other kids because he was head and shoulders taller and wider than every kid growing up. So, he couldn't uh he had to think things through, and there's probably an element of inclination already there since he already does that. And that's going to clash with what happened at Dumais Wells, which he thought it through as best he can. He came up with the best plan he could given the dire circumstances, and it ended in a bloodbath.
A
You know,
meat
not
grinder,
just
even worse than a
yeah,
bloodbath.
and
Yeah.
not even just for his side. Is he keeps having those images of what the shaman did to the Shaido, that that was so horrific that that turns his stomach, even though that was his enemy. But to see what happened to them uh, adds to his PTSD. And so you have that clash of, I acted here, and in his mind he might have acted rashly, given the circumstances, and so that's only going to feed into that. And Jordan should have spent more time exploring that, of
which
this
which
is
is funny.
why
Just a
he's
little
feeling.
side note. That's we get the horrific kind of vision of that, but it reminds me of. Did you ever watch The Boys?
I watched the first season, and then I never got around to watching
Was
the
Head Popper
subsequent.
in the first season? Person who made people's heads just explode.
I don't think so.
Okay, so there is a person who pops people's heads, and it's supposed to be like this gory thing that impacts you as the audience. But I was really thinking about it. I'm like, that's the best way to die. You're gone. You're done.
I
And
mean, the head popper in the first season was the guy who was uh having giving some fellatio, and the lady got overly excited.
oh no.
It
This actually just
squeezed
caused.
her legs together.
Yeah, no. That's also a good way to die. But did this one just like it explodes their heads? And I'm thinking of the way that Ashaman killed people, just like they're dead. Whereas in a real battle with real crude weapons like these people have, you basically get stabbed in the gut and you have sepsis inside until you die 3 days later with
Yeah.
gangrene, and it's actually more humane.
If you've accidentally cut yourself or stabbed yourself, or, got a fish hook stuck in you,
Oh
it's
yeah.
not fun. And then just, multiply that by a factor of 10 or more.
So yeah, it's more gory, but at the same time, it's actually quicker and more painless. So if I was to be dying in a battle, if I had to choose, I would have the Ashaman blow me up before I would have a
Hmm.
spear stuck in me where I
And
died 4 days later.
there's an added element to this, because I think it's the next section where we get to what I think is the whole point of this Perrin storyline, which is when they capture the Shaido prisoner. So I won't get into it yet, but that's the part I'm trying to hurry to get to, because I think it's the most key moment of this entire slog of Perrin's. And it would be so much more impactful if Jordan had taken a little more time to explore that the impact of Dumais Well and what it did to Perrin. And then, to your point, it should have made him more hesitant, and that annoys Fail. And then it would be a much more understandable and dramatic flip when he starts to act rashly, when he starts to hack through the brambles rushing towards the cliff, heedless of what's out there, because he's so uh, uh, self-critical of, you know, he very much is a blame himself first kind of person. And so you see right off the bat, he's blaming everyone, and in large part because he's blaming himself that she's missing. So with that in mind, when we get to the camp, he in chapter 2, he pretty much loses it right off the bat. Um, of what the hell are you all doing just standing around if my wife's taken? And then it takes him a second to realize, you know, what's going on here. This is then it dawns on, then after he kind of snaps at everyone, then he realizes, oh, why is everyone staring at each other like they're about to attack? And then he has to lean on Elias and some of the others and even Berelain, it helps uh diffuse the situation. Because he's not in his right mind, and
Mm-hmm.
that the not being in his right mind would work a lot better if we hadn't been groaning and rolling our eyes in at the end of the previous book, when he was acting kind of dumb.
Yeah, but this is
Uh,
where it starts to get annoying with Berelain too, because she
yes.
starts flirting with him and he snaps at her, and her response is to say, well, you should be flattered,
Hmm.
which time and place. You're competing in the courtroom, or
This is
in
yeah.
the ballroom, I should say, is one thing, but yeah, you're asking. See, females do mate switch. Men mate switch, but in a different way. And this is not the way.
Hmm.
This is not the way.
This was the next thing that I wanted to jump to, and it's page 107 on the in the paperback. It's after he has, you know, basically given everyone their tasks and all right, sent Elias out and gotten the Alejandro's guards to stand down, and then um he snaps at Berelain. Um and this page here, the reason I wanted to jump to it is because to me it's a little bit of a head scratcher. Um So, starting at the top here, you handled that very well, Perrin, Berelain said. A difficult situation and a painful time for you. Not formal at all now, just a woman full of pity, her smile compassionate. Oh, she had 1,000 guises, Berelain did. She stretched out a red-gloved hand, and he backed stare away before she could touch him. Give it over, burn you, he snarled. My wife has been taken. I've no patience for your childish games.
Which, when you
She
first read that and you haven't read the rest, you're like, well, maybe he misread, and maybe he's being an idiot, and maybe he's being hot headed. But then her response throws all that out the window.
Well, but that's what I'm wondering here is uh so she jerked as if he had struck her. Color bloomed in her cheeks, and she changed again, becoming supple and willowy in her saddle. I think I think he did misread that, but he wasn't
But she
completely
changed based
wrong.
on his reaction.
But
Yeah.
because he metaphorically verbally slapped her down, then she cranked the flirting up to 11. So, yeah, he might have misread that, but can you blame him given how you've been acting the entire time you've been
Mm-hmm.
around him and given the current situation he's in? That the way she decides, oh, well, fine then, and I'll crank it up to 11 and make things even worse. I don't know if we're supposed to have sympathy for her, but I sure don't. And doubly so with what Honora says here when she's leaving. Um, well, first to your point, not childish, Perrin, she murmured, her voice rich and amused. Two women contesting over you and you the prize. I would think you'd be flattered. Attend me, Lord Captain Galin. I suppose we two should be ready to ride at command. Blah, 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 blah. And Honora paused where she was, gathering the reins of her brown mare. Her mouth was a razored line beneath her beak of a nose. Sometimes you are a very large fool, Perrin Ibarra. Quite often, in fact. He did not know what she was talking about and did not care. At times she seemed resigned to Berelain chasing after a married man, and at other times amused by it, even helping out by arranging for Berelain to be alone with him. Right then, First and Aes Sedai both disgusted him. Healing stare in the flanks, he trotted away from her without a word. Um, I'm curious what Jordan's intent was there. Is if was he trying to make Berelain sympathetic with that initial compassion that he misread? Um, but it completely falls apart with the way she and Honora then treat Perrin, who's well within his rights to say, you people, or as he thinks there at the end, they disgust him. And frankly, rightfully so, given the situation.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you could take that because Honora could actually not be okay with her flirting and chasing after married men and think you just brought that back out of her by putting her in a corner.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's a very easy read right there. That's giving everybody the benefit of the doubt in the situation. She could have said she was not going there, but you're an idiot, so she did, and now I've got to pick up the pieces.
And you did it in front of other people, so she didn't have a choice.
Yeah, because you damaged her reputation by expressing that out loud.
Hmm.
You could have just gently pulled away and say I have things to do or something. Uh, so yeah, to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, that's probably the best answer. We use Occam's razor here,
Hmm.
but if she is in on it, then I don't know. We would have got more of it in the story, I think, later
Yeah.
because
But the way it escalates here in a couple of chapters, just to me, it adds to the what's going on here, and uh, why why is Perrin such a poor whipping boy in this half of the whole series? Really, since A Crown of Swords, he's kind of been this, you know, poor abused character who's getting it from all directions, and it's about to get worse. And much like where a Gawain and Elaine storylines can get a little frustrating or a lot frustrating, Berelain's too, because she never really gets her comeuppance. There are times where you can clearly see she's in the wrong and the author wants you to know she's wrong, but she doesn't really get her comeuppance.
I put a book up here, uh, facing codependence.
Mm.
This is Perrin. Codependency is a relationship in which one person needs the other person who in turn needs to be needed. The codependent person, known as the giver, feels worthless unless they are needed by and making sacrifices for the enabler, otherwise known as the taker. And when you talk about Perrin, Fail and Berelain could both fit the taker.
It's a good point. That's why he's getting, pulled in multiple directions the
Mm-hmm.
way he is.
Yeah, the typical what we call a codependent is the perfect partner for the narcissist. And
Hmm.
we've given Fail a little bit of a break compared to what we thought in our teens because we understand a little bit better.
Hmm.
But at the same time, when you combine her and Berelain as one storyline, he is the perfect. I guess you'd call him a simp here.
Hmm.
He is the perfect codependent for that relationship. And if you
So,
if you were to put them as one person, that's like the perfect bipolar narcissist right there,
hmm.
Berelain and Fail.
So where is it? In a couple of pages, there's a sharp contrast here with how Berelain is acting and the Aiel. And I'm wondering if this is on purpose, and it's one of those things I hadn't really noticed before. So it's page 110 in the paperback.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was something else odd about their departure, he realized as the last maiden went by. They were letting Gaul lead. Normally, any of them would have stuck a spear in him before allowing that. Why? Maybe. Shiad and Bane would have been with Fail. Gaul did not care one way or another about Bane, but Shiad was a different matter. The maiden certainly had not been encouraging Gaul's hopes that Shiad would give up the spear to marry him, anything but. Yeah, maybe that was it. Um,
Well, even before that, when Perrin says, "Go find her for me,"
mhm.
and Gaul like loses a little bit of tension there.
Yeah,
It's almost like he didn't trust Perrin to let him do what he needed to do.
that was another one of those that it's not really clear, and so it made me wonder, was that was that Gaul worried that Perrin might hold him back? Was that Gaul worried that because Aiel took her, he might blame them or might not, trust them or blame him for them being gone? What all is going on there? But I like your interpretation best of that it's Gaul, a little tension going out that Perrin is going to, much like Talonvor later, Perrin's going to let him go. And there may have been some worry that no, I need you to stay here until we hear
Mm-hmm.
word from the scouts who are already out. But the interesting thing to me, and again, why I wonder if it's on purpose, is that dichotomy between the the teasing, you know, almost to the point of abuse that the Aiel do because of their pretty harsh sense of humor, and it's suddenly switched off because of the seriousness of the situation. The
Mm-hmm.
maidens are just reflexively letting Gaul take the lead, because of how serious and personal this is for him. And you contrast that with what we just saw a couple pages ago with what Berelain does. And so again, I wonder if that was on purpose.
Well, and it's two different cultures here. They trusted Gaul to be the leader because of his feelings,
Mm-hmm.
whereas everybody else is looking at Perrin sideways because of his feelings.
Yeah, and I that may, I think that may have to do with the general philosophical outlook, the quasi zenness of the Aiel.
Mm-hmm.
As Gaul says when Perrin tells him to go, how does he phrase it?
Everybody wakes
We
from the dream.
we all
Yeah.
wake from the dream one
Yeah.
day, Gaul said gently, but if she still dreams, we will find her. Um, so that fatalism, that kind of ingrained fatalism of the Aiel, uh, I think makes them trust Gaul more, whereas the wise ones basically tell Perrin, get a hold of yourself or we're going to have to physically restrain you, and that would not look good for you since you're the leader.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that fatalism, that understanding, you know, as we commented before, one of my favorite things about the Aiel is sleep well and wake. It's a society where you might not. So that's
Mm-hmm.
that's their good night, is sleep well and actually wake up. So let's moving along. What's next?
Next is where the Ashaman offer, and he says no. Then Lenny has some wise words for him.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, she called him murder walking.
Yeah.
And well, then it stuck with him. That's something that kind of stuck with him for a few, at least a couple chapters here. So that's kind of important. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Lenny, when I picture her, I always picture, remember Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies? That's what
Mm-hmm.
I picture when I picture Lenny.
See,
Who was one of the youngest actresses on the set, by the way.
I
She
always pictured Estelle Getty,
Still Getty, who's that?
the old one in the Golden Girls.
Oh yeah, yeah. No.
Yeah, the old one in the Golden Girls. Man, then you're really old. That's a show that still holds up, by the way. Just
Oh yeah,
randomly
yeah.
watched it. I
Well,
don't
by
remember
by the
when.
way, that's where Sam Harris got his money from. His One of his
Oh,
parents
really?
was a producer for the Golden
Hmm,
Girls or something like that. That's how he. That's how a stoner gets to Stanford.
that works. Um, I also like that Linny interjecting here. Not only does she have you know, have the book of Ben Franklin sayings in her back pocket that we know her for from before we even met her, but she also serves to remind Perrin of what I was talking about earlier of, hey, it ain't just you and it ain't just Fail, and that makes him feel bad. It's just I wish the feeling bad was a little more than just the kind of self-flagellation that most of Perrin's storyline seems to be lately, and actually kind of contributed more to him being himself,
Mm-hmm.
being the him that we saw in Shadow Rising and in Lord of Chaos.
Well,
All
this
right.
this is part of being a leader that I don't think he ever resolves in his head in the entire series. Is you it's not very good for somebody with an army at their back to be so easily maneuvered by attacking their loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all susceptible to that. But you have to make that not a weakness. And this is his biggest weakness.
Yeah, it's when I can't wait till we get to Matt's storyline because there's an interesting contrast because he still feels it, and there's a couple of points coming up in particular that I'm thinking of here that uh Matt still has those feelings, but he's able to act around them. He doesn't let
Mm-hmm.
them consume him like Perrin and Rand tend to do.
Yeah.
Perrin and Rand react to it differently, but it's kind of the same deep cutting feeling that both of them have, and it causes both of them to do some dumb and irrational things sometimes.
Yeah, and I was kind of thinking about this with the taint since you brought up Rand. It's almost like the taint is like steroids.
Mm.
People don't get suicidal and aggressive because of the steroids. They get suicidal and aggressive because they were already that way, and the steroids push them over the edge. And
Mm.
Rand already had that bit of rage and stubbornness, and you
That's a good point,
yeah,
because you see that a little bit even in Eye of the World when he gets really like when he blows up at Egwene
mhm.
there before they even reach Berelain, where they have that argument there in camp and everyone's staring at him like, would you like to yell a little louder? So
Mhm.
that's a good point I hadn't really thought of before. Is you are that temper is already there. It's just
And
held in check.
who's the one that just went crazy? Not Hopwill. Was it Hopwill? Making the
No.
blocks.
Yeah,
He was they
Fedwin Moore, I think is
Fedwin Moore. Yeah, they made so many comments about him being like a grown child, and then he
yeah,
went
that's a good
crazy
point.
as and became a child again.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some comments there about his peach fuzz that he was just barely starting to shave.
Hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, he was one of the younger Ashaman. Yeah.
But also he would like snicker at like stupid little jokes, and just like he was a man boy, and when he
Mhm.
went crazy, it was a caricature of a man boy. He was there making blocks as a child, whereas Rand, as he's going crazier, just becomes more and more full of rage.
That's a good point. All right, chapter 3. I don't know what I have to say about this chapter. Um,
Oh, the contrast here. Perrin is going crazy because all he can think about is Fail. Fail makes in her head the comment of, "I can barely think about Perrin,"
mm, that's a good point.
and I don't know if it's a character thing or the situation thing, because she's the one that's in danger, and he's the one looking for her in danger.
I think it's both because think about where she came from. If I'm remembering correctly, she had like 4 older brothers, all of whom are dead by this point. And that's kind of what led her to become the kind of tomboy she is, and looking for adventure and things, because she was being uh she was being taught and molded to be the lady of court. But then by the time her last brother died, it's like there's no one else to do these things that the men are supposed to do. So she wanted to do them. And so when you look at where she's come from, not just the borderlands in general, but then her in particular, of her father's the general of Saldea, so he's constantly in danger, and then that danger has been brought home very personally with the deaths of her brothers as she was growing up. That she understands this better than Perrin does, because I mean, when you grow up in the backwoods of nowhere, these kinds of things aren't supposed to happen. But to Fail, it's a daily occurrence.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is where Jordan is problematic because he actually writes women well. Halfway down 119. She certainly did not want him gazing at her with lust or even interest, but those bland glances were almost insulting. Okay, so I've trained probably near 1,000 women in my career. This is correct. It is not misogynistic.
Well, but
They talk
later
to me. They know I know this is a thing. Don't look at me like that. But why are you not looking at me?
that but later it's not just, and this is where he's problematic, but again, he's right, is because it's not just the vanity and the ego of, hey, I'm pretty, damn it. There's also a calculation there, because as you kind of see as the chapter unfolds, she wants to distract him. She wants to use anything she can. She gets annoyed when she starts to lose the energy to resist. So, being naked and distracting the man is also strategic. It's she wants to have an edge because she's already thinking of how are we going to get away. And so this is where I didn't want to talk about it, but okay. So mini tangent. The worst problem, and I mentioned this when we did Blood Origin, but then I felt guilty since I only watched 20 minutes. So I've been pushing myself to keep watching season 3 of The Witcher, and the worst offense of the first episode is it's boring.
No, I did something I never do, almost never do, because I just did it. Almost never do. I turned it off mid episode and went to bed. 99.999% of the time, I will watch the episode and lose sleep because
E
I just can't not I would wake up in the middle of the night bothered by it if I
Even
didn't
if I
finish an
don't like
episode.
it, I want the completion.
Yeah, and last
Yeah.
night I was like, I'll just finish this tomorrow. And I didn't wake up. I woke up to pee once. That was it. I didn't feel any loss from not finishing the episode. It was the second episode. I finished the first, but it was the second episode, and I'm like, this is just not even that interesting.
I did that as well. I finished the first episode and I was kind of zoning out while I was watching it. And then during the second episode, the wife made me get up and go somewhere with her to work thing, dinner thing. And I all right, okay, pause, get up, completely forgot about it. Didn't even think to continue watching it until this morning after when I woke up. And and an element of that boredom is uh the predictability of this shallow ideology of the people who are writing things today. As annoying as much of a slog, I'm gonna keep going back to Scott's word there because it's so fitting. But as much of a slog as Perrin's storyline is, there are still engaging elements there. There are still things that can entertain you there because Jordan has a good grasp on people, which is what on human nature, which is what makes his characters so real, which is what makes them
Well,
engaging.
and let's be fair. When it comes to the women, we can't discount the fact that he probably co-wrote this with Harriet.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Basically, yeah,
all the clues in
he,
interviews
he
say that
yeah, he
it's
basically said as much in his lifetime, is that he leaned on her heavily when it came to the POV sections of the female characters, and because he was able to make them so interesting, and interesting means real, and real means flawed, real means imperfect. That's just the way the world is. That's the way people are. And so when you have these girl boss characters, it's a snooze fest. It's okay. I'm I'm really bored when I'm watching Jennifer and Siri because I know they're not in any real danger because they're girl bosses. And I'm bored when I'm watching, even when I'm watching Henry Cavill, because I know he's not going to be around next season if there is a next season.
yeah. Well,
So,
yeah. Let's go ahead and finish that because we'll get Affable Gentleman on for a
mhm.
review of this shortly. I was texting with him the other day, but
But the point being, even knowing where the storyline ends and not being satisfied with it, there are still moments where I get caught up when I'm trying to skim and I end up just reading, like fully reading. And there are sections here in these two chapters, chapter 3 and 4, where that happens because of how well crafted the character of Fail and the other women around her are. That that they all, Galena, Alejandra, Tharava and Savannah on the wise one's side, Magdan, all of those women are well crafted, fully realized characters. And so there are some interesting segments in there, even if this is a rereading, where the storyline's going and you don't care for it, you can still be entertained in the moment. And that's because he's problematic. Uh, So anything else about Roland smacking Fael's naked bottom, or are we ready to move on then?
Well, no, yeah, this is one of those. Remember, I brought up the feminist complaints about and this Roland Fael storyline is one of the biggest complaints. But they're so short-sighted. We're looking at a cultural difference, right? And not only are we looking at a cultural difference, we're looking at an anomaly within a culture, which is the brotherless.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care what your motivations are if you're trying to do good. And he's trying to do good within his cultural restraints. And when you really break down the storyline, Roland's not a bad dude.
Mm-hmm.
Roland just made a bad decision.
He's the good German.
He's a
The
good German.
the
Yeah, yeah.
the
He's
the the
he
noble chivalric soldier in the German army as opposed to the evil Nazi.
no, he's the standard German soldier. He's the Christmas truce
Mm,
when they put down their arms and they played soccer in the middle between the trenches. And the officers had to threaten to shoot the people to get them to go back to their trenches and start shooting each other.
mhm.
That's what Roland is.
That's a good, yeah, that's a better analogy is the World War One Christmas truce. And you're going to see that more and more as he comes back into Fael's storyline.
Well, he's also a
Um,
man bothered by what's going on because when
exactly.
when he chose to go to the Shaido because of the revelations that happened, he thought he was going to his tradition.
He
But
thought
then
he was
he
keeping his tradition, and instead
Mhm.
he's gone somewhere where it's being violated even further.
Yeah, and
And
so
that's
he's in the middle of this thing that he knows is wrong, and he's trying to make it right the best he can, and he catches feels along the way, which if she's as attractive as she's supposed to be, that intelligent and all the other things you would look for, that makes perfect sense.
and I mean that's the title of the chapter is customs, and you see some of that at the end of the chapter when Fael is talking to the Aiel guy Shane, who's giving them, hot tea to help warm them up, and is talking about how the Shaido shamed them because they wrapped them in blankets and cloaks and things because they were afraid they were going to freeze to death, rather than you're supposed to stay naked until you can put on white because that's the only thing a guy Shane is supposed to wear. But in the next chapter, it goes even further where when Tharava is talking to her that you wetlanders aren't real Guy Shane, which means you don't go in a year and a day. So this is a wise one who is supposed to be the keeper of the traditions more so than anyone else. And she's flat out saying, yeah, we're breaking these customs and we don't care.
Yeah, Roland is more equivalent to Frederick Douglass than he is to a bad guy because they're officially slaves at that
Mm,
point. They're not Guy Shane, they're slaves. They're not serving honor. They are owned at that point. And he's trying to make the best of the
yeah.
situation.
Yeah, and you see that here. I think it's at the end of this chapter where they start
Well, and
giving them all this
let me
jewelry
add
to
a layer
denote
to
that
the
you
Frederick Douglass.
belong to Savannah.
Yeah, let me add a layer to the Frederick Douglass. He's cannon fodder as a brotherless. So he's officially kind of a slave himself
Mm,
because of his honor and what he did, he has to stay. But they're using him as the point to the spear. So he's helping other people who are kind of in his situation as well. He looks like he's in a different situation, but he's not.
hmm
And if he could shed that, I mean, it's the old. Have you ever seen the picture with the donkey that his leash is on a like a plastic chair, but he's not going anywhere? That's Roland.
hmm
He could go anytime he wants, but he can't because he's got a leash, and that leash is inside his head.
hmm Um,
Way to overanalyze a very bit character here, but
what was the chapter? I think it was one of the last chapters in in the last book in Path of Daggers of stronger than written law. That's the way some customs are. There are customs that are so ingrained within the culture that they mean more than actual written legal documents, because everyone knows them and everyone takes them to heart. Um,
Well, and again, we talked about it with the Aes Sedai and the Wise Ones. It's a weakness because all you need is somebody that's going to game that system, and everybody takes it for granted.
Yeah. Um, so you see that here at the beginning of the next chapter uh when the Aiel warriors who took all the guys Shane go to leave. One of the men did as well, but Roland and the rest exchanged flat-eyed looks before they followed. Perhaps it meant something, perhaps nothing. Um,
This
Fael suddenly knew how someone in a whirlpool felt, grabbing desperately at straws.
this is the picture I was thinking of.
Yeah.
That's what Jaito does to these people because
Mm.
they end up in a they're being manipulated by a Savannah and a Tharava and in
Well,
essence Samael and Grendel by proxy.
and a really well-trained horse or even a dog, a really well-trained dog that you can do this with. If you drop the reins or drop the leash, they just stay.
Mm-hmm.
That they it doesn't even need to be tied down.
And the implication is you as their master is going to do the right thing, but they don't know that.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
think that, but they don't know
Yep.
that. You have to be the good person as the owner of the dog.
Hmm. Yeah, they're the reason drogs are so trainable is because they are genetically predisposed to wanting to be part of a pack. And if they trust you as the leader of the pack, then you're going to do the right thing. So they're going to follow along. And that's what you see here at the end of chapter 3 and the beginning of chapter 4 is Fail is looking at all these, as she thinks about it, a whirlpool. So there's all these currents swirling around, and it shouldn't be that way. If you look at how the Aiel are in Perrin's camp, and it's really just a small group, and it's not like an actual sept. So it's not like a cohesive unit already. It's just here's a group of wise ones and a bunch of maidens because they were at Rand's disposal, so he was able to send them off with Perrin to help Perrin. So the this isn't something that was a pre-existing unit, but they have come together and they basically act as one, even if they may not, fully agree or even fully like each other, they act as one. And now you see from Fael's point of view, and she doesn't even know all the nuances of Aiel society, and yet just because she's so politically savvy, she's able to pick out, you know, you've got the wise ones, you've got the brotherless, you've got the Shaido, you've got the Aiel guy Shane, you've got the Wetlander guy Shane, and even within the wise ones, you've got Savannah and you've got Tharava, so you've got at least two
Mm-hmm.
factions there. And now you have this Aes Sedai coming out of nowhere for some reason with Galena. So she's able to pick out there are all these conflicting currents here because this these people have become untethered from, the Roland is the only one who's minding the reins there. Everyone else is just going wherever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he's so conflicted. All right. So chapter 4, anything else in chapter 4 that jumps out at you? Um
No, I just wanted to defend Roland because he takes a lot of shit from the feminist posters.
and yeah, Roland and then Fael with him, but we'll get there when we get there. Fael never really does anything wrong except in her own mind. But it's understandable because he is a decent, compassionate person.
Well, and that's the thing about again, not to say there's a sex difference in how people think of uh cheating. Women are more angry about the relationship than they are about the sex, and men are more angry about the sex than they are the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
She committed adultery in her head because she developed a relationship and she actually liked it.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll get there when that resolves, is sad tragically as it resolves. Because
Yeah,
everything in this storyline is sad, tragic.
and fortunately and unfortunately, it doesn't resolve in the way that actually has Perrin jealous.
Yep. Um,
I don't know if Jordan did that on purpose because he didn't want Perrin to have that stigma on him as the
Yeah, because he
I
already
did
had the
this act
stigma
I
of
did this
killing
act
his
of
own
out of
wife
jealousness.
at the beginning
Yeah.
of the series. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's already got enough stigma. Yeah, fuck you people. All right. Anyway, um, this is a big effing deal too that probably shouldn't gloss over, but just mention briefly of Savannah comes riding up on a horse.
Forgot
Think
about
about how
that.
much
Yeah.
work it took for Avienda to get up on a horse and to ride, and she's still not comfortable doing it. She's
Yeah, but
still not comfortable sitting in a chair.
we do have a lot of history of Savannah like embracing wetlander ways along the way. So you can see that. It wasn't like a big surprise.
Hmm.
She
But
likes to stand out. That's the thing about Savannah. She likes to stand out. And what better way to stand out as an Aiel but get on a horse? Right.
that should lose her a lot of influence, and yet it doesn't seem to. Of She still speaks for the clan chief, and the clan accepts it, and the wise ones don't necessarily accept it, but they go along with it. And it's, I mean, how many breaks of custom and tradition do you need before people say, oh, okay, that's enough?
Look at trendsetters. She's a trendsetter for the clan or the whatever they call the group right now, because they're not even the Shaido anymore. They're
So
a
so
portion of the people that came through.
so Savannah is an Instagram girl with big boobs, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, this is why females are so susceptible to social media. She is a trendsetter. She's not the person doing the thing everybody else is doing. She's not the TikToker doing the thing everybody else is. She's the person that posts the first one, and everybody follows.
Hmm.
Are you doing the latest trend? Well, I started the latest trend, which is why I hate social media.
Mhm. Although, I guess in answer to my question of part of the reason Savannah is tolerated is on page 145, when Fail is doing her best to get everyone to follow along and play along, and she's being, meek and subservient. And Tharava says, "Oh, very good," Tharava murmured. "You might even convince someone as blind as Savannah." So she's tolerated for the same reason that Egwene is tolerated, because they assume that she can be manipulated and directed. Although you would think they would have learned their lesson by now, considering she led them in the worst offense you can have as an Aiel, which is to kill a wise one. So how but I guess that's the arrogance is, well, yes, but she didn't kill me because I'm Tharava and I'm smarter and stronger and more
Mm-hmm.
strong-willed than everyone else. So that won't
or,
happen to
or
me.
they're still in that limbo of we need to get rid of her, but how do we do it without it coming out that we did this thing? And that, I think that's the dilemma they're in. They've already made the decision to kind of stand up to her, which we saw in the previous book, but they're still not in a place where they think they're comfortable taking the next step without the other stuff coming out.
This is where Magdin becomes a more sympathetic and useful and less annoying character, because she's fallen so far so fast. She gets it more than the others do. Even more than Fail, who understands that she needs to put on these airs to get by. But so page 147, Magdalene laughed bitterly inside her white hood. You think we still have small choices? We have none. You need to learn about having no choices. That woman didn't pick us out because we have spirit. She almost spat out the word. I'll wager every one of Savannah's other servants has had that lecture from Tharava too. If we miss a word we should have heard, you can be sure she'll know about it. Um,
Well, and this is, yeah, like you said, usefulness of Megden, which we know is,
Morghese.
Morghese. Uh, it's no surprise it follows up right with Aliendra, Alejandra and Fail are two people who are recently fallen, and Megden is someone who fell to a Forsaken a long time ago. So it's again experience, like we talked about with Elias and Perrin. Experience trumps smarts sometimes.
Yep. And this is why Magnan can be so frustrating as a character because Morgase has both. She's very smart and she has a lot of experience. And so when she does dumb stuff, it's really annoying.
Yeah, well, and Alejandra, this is disappointing too. Alejandra should be more experienced in this too because she just went through her fall with Masema becoming such a big
Well,
and having to be subservient there.
if I recall correctly, she hasn't been on the throne that long because
Well,
uh
and at some point, someone was it when Galad rescued them and Uno was there that someone made a comment about was it Tom? Tom made a comment about Alejandra actually being smart because he points out her limitations in the matter. That was
yeah,
book
it's before we even meet her, I think.
yeah, and then like Elaine says something snarky about her, and
Be,
Tom
be,
says, "Be careful before you judge."
yeah,
And
I
yeah,
don't remember if it was about Alejandra or if it was about one of the other queens, but
no, it was
I
Alejandra as Geldin.
that the way she was dealing with the prophet, and then Tom says, "Yeah, do you know what happened to the person before her?"
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's the scene you're thinking of.
Yeah, because that was right before they get the girls on the boat with
Hmm. Hmm.
so what is that, book 5?
Oh, I just accidentally looked at one of the chapter titles. I'm not looking forward to that. Okay.
Which one?
Chapter 8 is the title is Sea Folk and Kin, so that'll be a lot of fun.
Oh,
All right, but
yay.
chapter 5 and 6 here. So, um, I think there's plenty more to say about Fael and the others that are captured, but I mean, there's much more, unfortunately, to come there. So we'll get there when we get there. All right, so um, the opening of this chapter is really good and reminds me of the opening of the first chapter, which I meant to talk about. We never really talk about it, but I love the way he opens every book with the wheel of time turns and Zay's just coming past and the wind. Um, I love the way he uses the wind blowing over the geography to give you a brief glimpse of what's going on with the rest of the world. Um, I especially like it in this one because it's actually going to matter quite a bit because you're going to see more of what's going on with the Sanchin controlled lands. And so you get a little tease there.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the opening of this chapter with Perrin in the Wolf Dream, and then you get Hopper showing up again here, being the wise mentor of and kind of echoing Elias, but in a different way. Uh, uh, Hear me, Cub, Hopper thought at him fiercely. Your mind is twisted with fear. She is not here, and you will die if you remain longer. Find her in the waking world. You can only find her there. Go back and find her. And then things get stupid and annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he, so before it gets annoying, though, and again, this is where um, I think he Jordan could have done a better job at um, having Perrin grow because our frustration that we ranted about in the last book was we've already been here and done that, and Perrin and Fael, you know, I want to say worked it out, but it's kind of hard to say that, especially when you're young. You don't work it out when you're young and married. you figure things out and you move on from there. Because
Mhm.
it's not like, okay, everything's fine now. That's just not how it works. There's going to be new things, different things, and you're going to have to keep figuring it out and working it out. But it seems so much like a reversion. And this is one of those times where I feel like it should have been an even harder shock than it is here. When Perrin is thinking, Light, he had tried to kill Hopper. In the wolf dream, death was final. Hopper is one of his best friends, even though he's a wolf. He's one of his mentors.
Mhm.
He is the mentor for the wolf dream. And Perrin was so out of it and agitated and irrational that he very nearly killed him without thinking. And uh this is where Perrin the Berserker comes in. Uh Perrin afraid to let the wolf take over. And this is, I think, one of the points of this whole slog. This and this scene that comes later that I was referencing is Perrin has been so afraid that this would happen. And he was never really in danger of it happening before. If you think about where he was as a person in The Dragon Reborn, when he finds I can't remember the guy's name, the poor little frog face guy that he feels bad for thinking that he
Oh,
had a frog face.
Narum?
Narum, yeah,
Yeah.
him and his brother, and he was so worried that that would happen to him. But if you think about Perrin as a character, you know, all through those first several books, he's never really in danger of losing it. He's never really in danger of giving over to the wolf.
This is a thought that just popped in my head with your little monologue there. What if Berelain represents passion in general?
Hmm.
Because the wolf that he's afraid of is crime of passion, right?
Hmm.
It's lashing out in anger, it's lashing out in jealousy, it's lashing out. And Berelain represents another form of passion. And he is fighting himself so hard because she's so hot. And uh, maybe Jordan just kind of flubbed a little bit in the delivery.
Hmm.
That could have been something that would have been like he's so afraid of going with emotion, with the feel, that he's afraid of the animal instinct. The animal instinct, the wolf around the she wolf that would be Berelain would be mounting pretty damn quickly.
Hmm.
And
Well, that's what the other wolves are telling him is, mourn the loss of your mate and move on. That's
mhm.
what we kind of skipped over that, but when he reaches out to feel for the wolves to see if he can get the wolves to tell him where the Shaido are, and he can't because they don't pay attention to those kind of things, but they commiserate with him. Okay, you lost your mate. Yeah, that's sad. But, you're a wolf. Move on. Find another mate.
But yeah, if we're to if Jordan was to be trying to convey something, why Perrin with the Berelain storyline? Because he's always fighting his passions. He's always fighting his emotions. He's afraid of them. He's always afraid of his emotions.
Hmm.
He's the typical you need to go see a shrink and talk about yourself kind of guy.
Hmm.
And I
And,
again, I think the delivery was a little clumsy in the slog, but that
because
might be where
yeah,
she comes in.
because he was never in any real danger. There were moments of rage and emotion, but he was never in any real danger of losing himself until now. And that's the realization he's coming to. It's just, to your point, it's not delivered as well as I would have liked,
Well,
as,
and
as
you
well
look
as
at
other sections are.
and I think the annoying part of it is he's too rigid. He's too afraid of his emotions. He fights his emotions all the time, and actually, his weakness is he doesn't let emotion help him, and the wolf helps him do that. That's where the wolf comes in. Everybody uses the trope, the berserker, but the animal instinct is probably the better word, and he actually is partly at his best work when he's in that state.
Hmm.
It's just when is it time appropriate, and he's searching for that balance of when is it time appropriate, and we got that in book 4. And here it looks like he's just constantly fighting. We lost all the character development.
Yeah. Which again wouldn't be as bad if we hadn't already seen it and complained about it in the previous book, because it makes sense that he loses all that development here, that he has to refine himself
Mm-hmm.
because of the emotional strain he's under. I mean, for crying out loud, he almost killed Hopper. That's a big effing deal.
Okay, so this actually made it a little more interesting to me. Let's look at book 4. Book 4, he was complete blacksmith, puzzle master, and the being overcome by emotion and animal instinct benefited him in his progression. Where now we're kind of actually going the other direction, where he had become comfortable with that, and now it's actually consuming him, and he needs to take a step back and become more the blacksmith.
Hmm.
And again, a little bit clumsily delivered, but if you take that approach, he's swinging the pendulum. He swung the pendulum one way, and now he's swinging back the other way, where the emotion is too much now. The emotion is getting him in trouble now. And when you look at, and it's coming because it's coming at him from all angles. Fail's missing. He just got done with Demise Wells. Masema is a pain in the ass, and Berelain is there. So everything is being pulled by emotion, whereas he needs to be the blacksmith again. Even the interaction we talked about earlier, he didn't stop Berelain. He lashed out at her. That's what got him in trouble there.
That's
That's
a good
why he
point.
was a moron. He didn't say, not now. This is not a good time. He screamed and yelled at her in front of everybody.
Uh,
Welcome to another episode of where we overanalyze fictional characters.
so how does that fit in with what's going on here in these couple of pages where he wakes up in Berelain's tent in her bed? And of course, she has a perfectly reasonable explanation, which is,
Mm-hmm.
you and your armsmen might have frozen to death if I hadn't gone looking for you when Norel returned with news of my scouts. No one else had the nerve to disturb you. Apparently, you snarled like a wolf at everyone who did. When I found you, you were so numb you couldn't hear anyone speak to you, and the other man was ready to fall on his face. Your woman Linny kept him. All he needed was hot soup and blankets, but I had you carried here. You might have lost some toes at best without Honora. She seemed afraid you might die even after she healed you. You slept like a man already dead. She said you almost felt like someone who had lost his soul. That's something that's come up before, and it's we've never been given a satisfactory answer to that, I don't think. And I
I
think that's
think
one of the mysteries Jordan wanted to keep.
I think our explanation about the world of dreams being the metaphysical, it's like the purgatory,
Mm.
kind of
Because
fits there.
what I'm specifically referencing here is this was a big deal on the forums for a long time. Is wait a minute, how did that happen? Remember in the Great Hunt when they bring the guy, the Ogier who had been caught by Mech's Shin, the Black Wind, and Varen touches him and then recoils and says, "It's like he has no soul." How how did she do that and what happened there? Because she can't be using the power. So what is that? And Jordan, to my knowledge, was always very coy about what happened there. But you do see it pop
Well,
up again, like here.
let's look at 2 points of reference, which are the heroes of the Horn, who are constantly in Tel Arenroyd, and the wolf dream, the final death. So, and he has a connection to the wolf dream. The wolf dream is your soul, and he has a wolf soul, whereas the souls of the companions are tied to the wheel to constantly be re-delivered. They have a permanent spot in this place where other people just kind of show up and go away, show up and go away, show up and go away, right? So this is like the hub. It is the place where that thing that is outside of your body exists, and in some people it's more powerful than others, which is why I think you there's no surprise that one of the Ta'veren, who is tied to the wheel, has the wolf dream. He is more closely tied to the wheel than other people. He is a hero of the horn in essence. He is one of those people. Arthur Hawkwing was the most Ta'veren person before Rand that had ever existed, and he is tied to that. So your presence in this place is determined by your proximity to that. And in the wolf, he technically was without his soul. His soul was in the wolf dream. We got that in italics in the first part of the chapter. His soul was not in his body; it was in the dream.
That's a good point.
Now, how the Aes Sedai detect that, I don't know. To your point,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem to be a thing of the power, because Berelain says that she even thought she felt it when I felt it as well when I touched you. So not even thought that. So she has, you know, some knowledge or something of it. All right, so naked time with hot sexy queen lady. All right, so they banter, and I like his thought here of on page 157, so plausible. And if he asked why the first of Mayan herself was watching over him in a half-dark tent instead of her serving women or some of her soldiers or even Honora, she would have another plausible answer. He did not want to hear it. Blah, 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 blah. And then so next page, one at the top of 158, her expression was so open and honest, he could have believed her had she been anyone else. She even managed to smell honest. Um, Again, I think that's Jordan telling us that she is being honest again.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happens here is what makes Berelain decide to keep it cranked up to 11. To your point, he lashed out at her and did it in public, which is why she turned it up to 11. And I think what happens here is why she keeps it at 11, because she is being honest in her own, but she's still her. Yeah, she's still going to be an annoying B word because that's who she is. I think we all have friends who are good people, but also annoy the crap out of you. That's the kind of person Berelain seems to be.
Well, and also just kind of step back for a second and just think about in your life, what is the one thing about you that you think you're the best at?
Mm.
You know, do you think you're super smart? Do you think you're the best pitcher on your team? Do you think whatever? Pick the thing that you think you're the best at. And someone does something that makes you feel not good at it. You know, you're the best pitcher in the league. You're Nolan Ryan, you know, and someone knocks it out of the park. How do you feel? You come out and you double up. You double down on your effort, right? Well, she's the best female to male manipulator in the world in her eyes. And he said no. And not only no, he did it publicly. He hit it out of the park on national TV.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she, you know, a little theory of mine, a little empathy here. Think of the thing you think you're the best at, and then have somebody insult that in public. You're going to react kind of similarly.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what happens here at the bottom of page 159. When she comes back in while he's getting dressed. Perrin, I know you are hurting. There are other things you might want to say that you can't to another man. I can't see you crying on Linny's shoulder, so I offer mine. We can call a truce until Fael is found. A truce? He said, carefully bending to tug on a boot. Why do we need a truce? She was silent while he donned the other boot, blah, blah, blah. Very well, Perrin, if that is how you want it. Whatever that was supposed to mean, she sounded very determined. Suddenly, he wondered whether his nose had failed him. Her scent was affronted of all things. When he looked at her, though, she wore a faint smile. On the other hand, those big eyes held a glint of anger. I think that's just leaning into your point of uh and she's kind of been shown this before, but she still doesn't get it yet. I think she finally gets it towards the end of this storyline, but as Fael has pointed out to people before, Perrin befuddles you because he's honest and you're assuming he's not, because you're used to dealing with people in power who are not honest. and I think Berelain just doesn't get Perrin as much as she thinks she does. And to your point, she can't see that she doesn't get him because in her mind, she is the best player of this game in the world.
Well, and she succeeds because he openly refused her, but she set it up in a way that it looked like he gave in very publicly. So it was the perfect counter attack to what he did.
Yeah, he had uh I mean she was saying we can call a truce, but she had already, you know,
Done the damage.
done the damage. She had already set him up to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of makes the whole she loses a lot of sympathy in my mind there of yeah, she might have meant it. Perrin's nose wasn't lying. This was her own particular way of meeting Perrin in the middle. But I think we've ranted about this before in spoiler talk when we were talking about Berelain and Perrin is as smart as she should have at least partially understood the damage she was about to do to Perrin
Yeah, but that
reputationally.
that discounts the fact that we are amazing at deceiving ourselves
True.
because it's adaptive. You become a better liar if you actually believe your own lie.
Yeah.
And you'd think that would
Uh
be a very honed skill for someone in her situation as a politician of a very tiny country.
um all right. So what next in this chapter jumps out at you that you want to talk about?
Uh,
Um
well, well, the next thing is we get to meeting Masema, right?
yes. I do like another little fun Bulwer tidbit here when he's not even in the scene of Perrin accidentally keeping Bulwer's secret with Berelain thinking, where is it? It was not very nice of you to make me think that dried up little secretary of yours was finding out more than my thief catchers. And Perrin's dumbstruck of, wait, what? Fael had those dingleberries spying for her, but it gets to keep Bulwer's secret a little longer. Um, before we get to Masema. Um, you just slipped that in. Is there anything else you forgot to tell me? Anything that escaped your mind? How can you ask? She almost laughed. I would have to strip myself naked to reveal more than I already have. Spreading her arms wide, she twisted slightly like a snake as if to demonstrate. Oh dear. Giggity. Um,
Yeah, unfortunately, I would never be her target because I'm too much like Matt. Was too much like her.
I forgot about that. They're kind of their one interaction. It's him going, is
Why
her
can't I
going
be stiff as a
too much
board
like
and then these girls would want me?
giggity. Oh,
Yeah.
wait. No, that's something else.
Nope.
All right. So moving along from the shenanigans and the hot evil chick.
Yeah, are
Uh,
they gonna even have Berelain, and who are they gonna have play her?
I don't know that we'll even last that long with how things are going. Um
They're already approved of season 3, so
um oh, oh goody. I can't wait.
yeah,
Uh well, hey, at least I saw that there's a new grand tour, so I can watch that when I re resubscribe to Prime to force myself to watch season 2 of this hot garbage. Yay. All right, Masema, crazy guy.
yeah.
All right.
I actually wish he would have wrote him more of a less of a like more of like a Jim Jones type. like a true cult leader, real charismatic. He kind of wrote him super creepy and dirty and all. It almost, he tried to make him like a Gandhi that was evil,
Mm.
but if he had made him like a
Well, I think we get that when we first see him in Fires of Heaven, when Nynaeve goes to meet him, and you see, oh yeah, he's crazy, but he's also a true believer, and he is doing things that resonate with normal people. Even if like it goes overboard,
yeah, I
people are
guess you
gonna
can
get caught
kind
up
of
in the moment.
yeah, you can kind of put a little bit of Charles Manson on him here,
Mm,
the way he's seen here, but at the same time, something a little bit more expansive, one of these big giant cult leaders, not someone who's got a kumbaya around the fireplace kind of thing. But
yeah,
yeah, one of these guys that you just, yeah, you could almost say Trumpian. You could have made him, but it just, it's almost too cartoony to me.
yeah, yeah, especially here. Okay. Um, all right. So chapter 6, Scent of Madness. Where do you want to go to here?
I think this is a lot of setup, personally, because of something
Yeah,
we've talked about in spoilers before. Uh, and we're not quite there yet, so it's still kind of a spoiler.
yeah. All right. So the beginning of the chapter just reiterates what we kind of already heard about Berelain's men being ambushed and killed, and not by Aiel. Uh, so you know this is going to be a very tenuous and difficult alliance here with Masema. Um, you also start to get the beginnings of people treating Perrin differently, um, because of the hussy Berelain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So you already start to get the
which
beginnings
I
of
think
that.
might have been one of the points, because it is a struggle for Perrin right now, but it
Mhm.
also helps him become detached from the Two Rivers men as a leader to some degree, which we definitely need going towards the last battle.
Mhm. Well, you get that a little bit here on page 170 with how he reacts to Talonvor. Um, yes, he said aloud. I told him he could. If he said otherwise, meaning he didn't say that he could go, but if he said otherwise, he might have to take notice later. So easier to just kind of swallow your pride here and yeah, I didn't say that, but it's just as well, and I don't want to have to. This is something you learn very quickly as a parent is don't say something if you're not ready to follow through. You'd better do this or I'm going to do that. Well, you'd better be prepared to do that because there's a good chance the kid isn't going to do this because they're kids.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little, note of Perrin being leadery. Uh,
Well, and Gil kind of halfway almost spilling the beans about
mhm,
Megden.
mhm.
It's like I've known her all my life. Uh,
Cough, cough. And Lenny's glaring at them. Uh, where is it? Yeah, so 171. Lenny yelling at him. Sup from too many dishes, and you deserve a bellyache that'll split you open, especially when they're not your dishes. Too many dishes, Perrin muttered. I haven't had a one. That's my trouble, not a bellyache. Oh, poor Perrin. And this is where Gil spills the beans about uh Berelain being a hussy. Um, so 172. So this is where I very quickly lose any sympathy with Berelain in this exchange of, yeah, Perrin's nose isn't lying to him, and he should know better because he just experienced this a few chapters ago at the end of A Crown of Swords with Fail that uh he was confused because his brain couldn't make sense of what his nose was smelling, but his nose was still smelling what it smelled. People, this is the whole You know, he's a walking lie detector. You can say whatever you want, but your scent and your pheromones, that's going to be what it is. Um, but as Perrin's a lot more sympathetic given the situation. He's just lost his wife. Berelain is just frustrated that she can't keep playing her game. You know, and well, to her point, to her it's not a game, or at least it's much more serious than just a game. Even though they are playing at something, but the the impact it has on Perrin here is what makes me very quickly lose sympathy with Berelain and makes this whole rest of the storyline frustrating, because until he rescues Fail, he's going to have to keep dealing with Berelain and with the implications of that. Um,
Just because I understand her doesn't mean I have sympathy.
yeah.
The sympathy is a
Um,
very specific word.
Yeah, yeah. You see, my Lord Linny, he drew a deep breath. She walked over to the miner camp this morning before sunrise to see how you were and why you hadn't come back. The first chance was dark, but one of her maids was awake, and she implied, I mean to say, don't look at me that way, my lord. Uh, burn me, I slept in the tent, man. That was all I did. You tell her that. Me? Gil wheezed once he could talk. You want me to tell her? She'll crack my pate if I mention a thing like that. I think the woman was born in Formatting in a thunderstorm. She probably told the thunder to be quiet. It probably did. You're Shambayan, Perrin told him. It can't be all loading carts in the snow. He wanted to bite someone. Yeah, and not in a giggity way.
Yeah.
Uh, I I do appreciate none of the guys knowing how to deal with this, because it's one thing to just tell the guy that, all right, that's done. Wait, but you wanted me to go tell the old woman that? Are you stupid? Are you crazy? Ah, all right. Um, and Perrin is grumpy and snapping at people. Um, so 175 is when he yells at the pretend Aiel. Um, and starts kind of blames them for her being captured. Uh, and after he yells at them as he thinks down at the bottom 175, that made no sense, and he knew it as the words left his mouth. Fael could have talked with him anywhere, and she would never have arranged to meet her eyes and ears light, her spies, in company with Berelain. It was a mistake to speak without. It was always a mistake to speak without thinking, and that's to the point you were making earlier about this is the more I think about it, the more I think you're right of this is what's supposed to be going on here. It's just not done as well as it could have been and as well as Jordan did in other times. That's what's going on here is he's acting without thinking, and then he recognizes it, which just pulls him into this negative feedback loop of self-loathing, which then makes him continue to act irrationally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's almost like his storyline was he thought too much and he needed to act, and now he's acting, but he needs to think. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of getting that. And spoiler alert, you would think that would level out into something legit, but it never does after this. That's the problem.
Yeah, yeah. We'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
Um,
I can't wait to get back to the Matt storyline, by the way, because
gosh, yes.
because he was the I do dumb things and I'm suffering for it, and now I've learned my lessons of the whole group of guys that we have to follow here.
Yeah. All right. So then a bunch of AO come back bringing news finally. Um, and they also bring in signs to show that this isn't just like a group of warriors, that this is like a whole sept or septs all coming together. So there's a lot of people out there, which immediately throws a wrinkle into Perrin's plans, that he's thinking he's going to be able to jump in and rescue, and it ain't going to happen, because this is um this is where the starting to think, to bring that thinking and acting back into balance kind of starts to happen. It's just a frustration that it doesn't seem to happen as fast and as well as we would like. But I think this is the start of that, of when he starts to realize, oh, this isn't just some random group of Shaido that captured them. They captured them and brought them back to an incredibly large group. There are far more warriors out there than I have with me here. And so now he's forced to start thinking because he doesn't have a choice. All right. Any other thoughts before we end here? Because my last thought is at the very end of this chapter.
Go ahead and go to it.
Okay, so all right, so Perrin, and the way I read this scene, the lead up to this, is that Perrin is trying to talk Masema into not coming along with him by saying, we're going to have to travel because we have to make up time. We have to catch up with this Aiel group, which is moving fast because they're Aiel. So we're going to have to travel. And I think Perrin is really hoping that's going to leave Masema behind, because he's not going to want to go. But instead, where is it?
188. He will
Yeah,
be
so
grieved.
let me start at the bottom of 187.
Okay.
Uneasy murmurs ran through the men behind Masema, and they eyed one another and shifted weapons. Perrin caught muttered curses and also yellow eyes and shadow spawn. The second shaven-headed man glared at Perrin as though he had blasphemed, but Masema just stared, trying to bore a hole into Perrin's head and see what lay inside. See, that's the good part of Masema there, of where he's not as outwardly crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of crazy that works with Masema, of when you see him, like everybody else is talking, he's just giving you the crazy eye. He would be grieved if harm came to your wife, the madman said at last. The emphasis named ran as clearly as the name Masema did not allow to be spoken. There will be a dispensation in this one instance, only to find your wife, because you are his friend. Only this. He spoke calmly, calmly for him, but his deep-set eyes were dark fire, his face contorted with unknowing rage. Perrin
You
opened his mouth, then closed it without speaking. The sun might as well rise in the west as Masema say what he had just said. Suddenly, Perrin thought that Fael might be safer with the Shaido than he was here and now.
Have you ever watched tapes of Ted Bundy defending himself in court?
No.
That's what I think of when I read the Masema stuff.
Hmm.
And that actually would be a good presentation of it. It's actually quite the man was an evil genius and a murderous crazy person at the same time.
So maybe they should get the guy who played Dahmer to play Masema in the series.
No. They would have to find somebody to no, the Jeffrey Dahmer guy, that would be a little weird.
I
But
haven't watched the whole series, but the clips I've seen, he's very cold and creepy.
yeah, it's actually really well done. But no, it's a different kind of creepy. No, Ted Bundy was a very intense but intelligent creepy.
Mm.
And that's a different thing. Uh but I'm thinking of the actual clips of him defending himself in court. In fact, the judge in his trial where he ultimately went to finally was put to death, ended his speech with, I wish you would have chosen being a lawyer instead of what you did because you're an excellent lawyer. And it was yeah, it's pretty crazy, but that's what I try to picture there, because it just makes it less the skeezy and
Yeah.
more somebody who would be an influence over all these people.
Which I think you get that in the description there of where was it? Da, 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 da. He spoke calmly, but his deep-set eyes were dark fire, his face contorted with
Mm-hmm.
unknowing rage.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. He would give this legal case for himself while you just see this intensity in his eyes. Like, this is honestly what I think. Even though I was the person there that clubbed this woman over the head with a log, I'm still defending myself.
All right. Well, any other thoughts before we move on to the spoiler thing or
No, we
two
got
we
to go
had?
spoilers. We've
Okay.
gone almost 2 hours now.
Yeah.
So
Well, that was 100 pages, so we covered all that, and then it's oh goody, it's back to Elaine's storyline. When do we get back to Matt? So we'll try and hurry through Elaine's storyline next time and get to Matt so we can all be happier. All right. So go away if this is your first read through, because you don't want things spoiled, because that's part of the fun of this entire series. So what were the I know we had a thing. I had a thought on the sea folk.
yeah,
Early on.
let's go to that in a second, because I wanted to begin where we ended. Masema's fervor to find Perrin's wife is Masema's undoing.
Mm, it's a good point. Um, it also kind of I hadn't thought about that, but the end of that scene there kind of bookends his death
Mm-hmm.
scene, where he has the same kind of calm fervor. You know, I like that scene is from his point of view, so you finally see what it is that he's seeing that makes him so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's why he can be so calm and yet so insane.
Oh, and it's a little oh, shit. I had a thought there. Maybe I'll think of it when we get to that scene, but it's Fail is the one that oh no, no, here's my thought. Uh I think there's a thing that Jordan wanted to portray here, but it's a little abstract, is if we never save Fail, Perrin becomes like Masema.
Mm,
I think he's trying to put that kind of out there in the ether at this point, where Perrin is disgusted by Masema, but he is going down the path of fervor that Masema has.
it's a good point.
And I think if we never save Fail, Perrin becomes like that, which is not good for Rand. Not good
Well,
at all.
yeah, I think it's the next section of Perrin's storyline where we get to the point where I really wanted to talk about, which was him torturing that guy and then finally throwing away the axe.
Mm-hmm.
Is that was him going full Masema. I mean, even Masema and those people are looking at him with a different kind of respect when he does that. And so that is that is probably the point of this storyline is paralleling Masema's uh cold rage with Perrin's barely bottled up rage. And then when he lets it out, he realizes, oh, I'm turning into that. I can't do that. But just the point we've already made is I just wish it would have been done a lot more efficiently and a lot quicker,
Mm-hmm.
because I think you could have done all of that. I mean, he's gonna throw the axe away here in a little bit, but then we still have all of next book, and then is it Knife of Dreams when they finally frickin' rescue Fail? Because I don't think it's Crossroads. I think it's Knife of Dreams that this storyline finally resolves itself,
Mm-hmm.
which is really frustrating. It's
Yeah.
just way too long.
Yeah, we've got another 2 books still to deal with here, so
All right.
stay
So,
tuned.
any other spoiler thoughts?
Sea folk use the island.
Yeah. So, I actually wasn't even thinking of the island, but that's another one where the sea folk is So those people, I can't remember what they're called, that group of people that live on the island and do all the
Mm-hmm.
work for the sea folk, and they all commit mass suicide, and it never really goes anywhere. Um, and it's yet another point where the sea folk as a plot point, as a people, as a point of interest never really goes anywhere. And so not only that, but what I was thinking of actually was because they have that monopoly in Shara, Jordan could have used them to just sprinkle a hint or two about Demandred
Mm.
because they're the only ones who really possibly could have found out something was going on there. And we get like one hint where there's civil war in Shara, and I don't even remember where that scene is. And someone goes, well, why does that matter? And it's well because there's never fighting in Shara. There's never news outside of Shara. It is always presented as this uh uh, uh bulwark of solid civilization. And that's like the only hint that you get that something's going on there. And Jordan could have used the sea folk to expand their role a little bit more by having someone somewhere drop some hints about what's going on in Shara. But I've also long thought your point of uh somewhere before the Sanshin position becomes solidified and their storyline kind of changes with Matt of using the sea folk. Like I don't remember where it is, but when Logain goes to the sea folk and says, "All right, time to enact your part of the bargain," and all it is by carrying food to Tenchiko. Well, what if Logain and a bunch of Ashaman had gone out with the sea folk and you would have had them battling the Sanshin
Mm-hmm.
out in the Western Seas? Well, then they would have mattered more because as it is, they kind of don't matter and they're just annoying.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my thought. My prime thought there was about Demandred. But to your point, there were other things you could have done with them there too.
Yeah, and I'm looking for it right now in the prologue, something we skipped over last time in our echoey video was one of the things Rand was doing when he was in Karhine at the there was something mentioned about he was looking into Shara, and I think there was supposed to be a hint there
Oh,
that
was it when he was in Ruidine? Because so it's there when Min is mentioning all the things he was doing to
mm-hmm,
to throw off all the trails.
that might be it. Let me
So
skip
it's
to that.
page 84 is where Min is talking about forthcoming, Min said, sounding suspicious uh of his motives, he hoped, or anything but the truth. The dizziness and others have faded slowly. You have been as open as a muscle, Rand, and I am not blind. First, we traveled to Ruhadine, where you asked so many questions about this Shara place that anybody would think you meant to go there.
Okay, so maybe he was just trying to throw off the trail, but
Yeah.
yeah, I thought there might have been a clue there, but that he was suspicious that something might have been going on there. But yeah, this is again we're nitpicking at Jordan here because he still
Mhm.
wrote one of the most epic things ever.
Yep.
But I think his trying to be secret about where Demandred was to have a the October surprise when we get there was something that ended up being a detriment because you just kind of didn't care when it got there.
Hmm.
It was like, oh, yay, new army of new people we have to learn everything about in about a chapter before the last battle. Okay, cool. We're there. We'll try to keep up. You know.
It's kind of how I felt watching the first episode of season 3 of Witcher. It is the way it wrapped things up. I know from what you're doing at the beginning of the season that you want me to care about Yennefer and Ciri, but the way you wrapped up their storylines in the previous season makes me not care. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, whatever.
Well, in I understand putting Siri a little bit more forefront, which you would have had almost none of her
Hmm.
in the first season if you did it the right way, because when you talk about The Witcher as a story, Ciri is central. But this whole push to have Yennefer as more than Geralt is where it really goes wrong.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
have Ciri equal with Geralt, that would have been fine because she is like this, elven blood thing that is like the center to this universe at this point. That's fine. I understood that part, but to have Yennefer be more than just the love interest of Geralt who helps out is where they kind of went wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
And we need more
mirror.
Sabrina. We need Sabrina nude, by the way. If you are a part of the show and you're watching,
Which
Sabrina's
one's
hot.
Sabrina? Is that the redhead or the blonde?
The blonde.
The blonde mage.
The one that was a little frumpy in the first season, but now she's like super hot. Yeah.
I was. Which one's the redhead from that played a bigger role in the second season?
Triss.
The one that got burnt. Triss. Yeah.
Triss. Yeah, and according to Chuck, she's like not a good person. I didn't get that from the third game, but I didn't read the books. So uh she apparently rapes Geralt, and then Yennefer gets pissed at Geralt. It's a Berelain situation, is what it is.
Yeah.
To tie that back to what we just talked about for 2 hours, but
I'll have to read the books at some point. Giggity. All right. Well, that is all for that. So we got through Perrin's storyline. Next time, next Winter's Heart time will be Elaine's storyline and what's going on in Camelin there.
and we're getting
Not sure how long
dangerously
that.
close to having to watch the series. So if you haven't done your rewatch yet, you've got to do it. I already bit the bullet and did it. So, and I've got like 30 pages of notes on it. So
Yeah. I may have to go down there at least, for the first episode or two so that I can have some commiseration. We can have cigars and whiskey and suffer through it because I am not looking forward to that.
you're gonna make me suffer through it for a third time just because you don't want to do it alone.
Yeah. No, but no, to watch the beginning of season 2 together.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about
No.
season 1 again. Oh,
Gosh,
I can't do it
geez,
again.
no. Yeah,
I've
no.
taken enough notes that I don't have to do it again. I did that on purpose.
All right, well, I'll bite the bullet and do that here so that we can do a recap and a preview before the season comes out, and then we'll see if we're as right about season 2 as we were about season 1. And then next week our Wednesday political time will be I don't know what, because I have checked out of the news lately.
Well, we've got we could talk football. We've got the football season started. I watched the Texans preseason game last night.
We've got World War III. We could talk about that.
Yeah, we've got
Yep.
500,000 troops being posted right outside of the Ukraine. Yeah, that's there. I wanted to talk kind of a combo psychology fitness episode that I sent you stuff from. And it's actually based on a Sam Harris interview I watched because not everything he says is dumb. Which is actually this is a good test. If you ever think you might be biased about something, say your thought in someone you hate's voice. So if say you're like really sold on CRT and the systems of oppression and everything, take a thought from that and say it in Trump's voice and see if you still believe that thing. That I think that's like a good little test that people can do in their head. And I do it.
That is an interesting thought. Yeah.
And so when I hear Sam Harris talk about, dead babies in the basement wouldn't matter if it was on Hunter Biden's laptop, it makes you want to hate him. But then I hear him say something that I'm like, yes, that's like one of the best things I've ever heard out of the exact same voice. You've kind of taken your bias out of it because the emotional trigger is already overturned by what was actually said. So yeah, if you're a lefty, say everything you believe in Trump's voice. And if you're a super uber conservative, say everything you believe in AOC's ranting maniacal voice. Something, or Bernie's voice. Bernie's easier to imitate.
Bernie, yes, Bernie.
So yeah, that's a good little test because then you can kind of take the emotional knee-jerk reaction out of it. because your emotion is set to the voice. Your emotion is not set to the thought.
Last thought from me, because I was going to bring it up earlier and I forgot, is I've referenced this channel before, but The Little Platoon on YouTube. The Little Platoon being a reference to Edmund Burke. He's got, I believe he's done graduate work in philosophy, and it shows with the way he approaches things. He did an almost 3-hour review of Barbie, which sounds painful, but he managed to make it amusing.
Longer than the
And
actual movie. All right.
yeah,
I could just go watch the movie, but which I
but
will do when it's on streaming. I'm not going to go pay money to watch it, but
yeah.
I have heard mixed reviews about it from people I trust.
Mhm.
So I do want to actually watch it at some point. I'm just not going to go
So
sit in a theater.
the way he breaks it down, um, technically, philosophically, psychologically speaking, is what I was thinking about when I was referencing how um modern wokeism makes for boring stories. And in the case of Barbie, makes for confused stories because you have these competing views of the ideology and human nature. And so the way he breaks that down is a good example of what I'm talking about when I say that wokeism makes for crappy stories, boring stories.
Okay, so this is very random, but a car just parked in. So my desk is set right in front of the big window that goes to the street. A car parked in the middle of the road. A guy got out of the car from the driver's seat with like denim booty shorts on and was walking up to the front door across the put a package down, and he walks back like this, and his denim booty shirt and his shirt said gay really big on the front. And then he got in the passenger seat and the car took off. He got out of the driver's seat. So this is just a weird random thing that just really happened in front of me while we were live on our recording. So
That sounds exciting. All right. Well, on
yeah,
that note, we'll
you're
see y'all next
excited.
time.
Feel these nipples.
All right. See y'all next time.
See y'all next time.